Hello, everyone. Welcome back to VCART. I'm your host, Victor, and today I have some actual real world racing style content. We're doing predictions today. And with me is my buddy Brandon. Brandon, would you care to introduce yourself?
Hey everybody, I'm Brandon from Supernova Racing.
Anything more than that? Brandon, what do you do? Or
Oh, I'm a big sim racer and a huge advocate for Formula One content.
Yeah, this is the guy that actually got me interested in honestly just racing and like cars as a whole. Like I used to enjoy like playing the occasional Need for Speed here and there. Back in middle school, high school, I occasionally dabbled with Forza Motorsport. But yeah, I met Brandon, and he's kind of cars all the time, and I put my toes in, and here I am. So predictions. We're going to do F1 and IndyCar. F1's a bit more Brandon's field. He has a bit more history with it. But we're also doing IndyCar today, and that's a bit more my field. So we're going to start with F1 first. So who do you think is going to come out the gate better than expected? Or, we saw practice today. Using what we've seen today, what are your general takeaways for who's going to do well?
Now, I would have said before I saw Free Practice 2 these things, but I don't know so much now. So just give me a little bit of credit here because I'm not really sure based off of that information. But I was hoping that Logan Sargent would be a big surprise.
Yeah.
And would give Albon a run for his money. But I don't know what happened in FP2, but he came out as the last car and the slowest car. So not a great showing from him.
He is still new to the series. For those that aren't aware, Logan Sargent is the first American prospect in Formula One since Alexander Rossi in 2015. And he only had like a 6-race stint with Marussia back then. So,
but we can't forget about the guy who had a full ride in F1. Scott Speed.
Yeah. Well, Scott Speed, that was early 2010s.
I think it was 2009 that he got.
2009. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, for my better than expected, I put Nick DeVries, even though he's going to be in the Toro Rosso, but it's not Toro Rosso anymore, the AlphaTauri. And they didn't do super well last year. I think DeVries is really good at giving feedback, and I think they're going to be able to develop the car pretty well. And I also picked that Aston Martin is probably going to look top 3. I don't know if they'll be better than Mercedes by the end of the year, because Mercedes, again, is very good at developing a car. But from what we've seen in testing and now in practice, I don't want to jump on the hype train, but man, it's right there, and it's slow enough that I think that if I run, I could catch the train and get on. So now, better than expected, moving from that, who do you think is going to be a disappointment or maybe worse than what people might have anticipated?
So for this one, I didn't answer a single driver because I feel like that's unfair to that driver. Really, It's going to be largely the team that produces the results as far as the car being good enough to drive.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like ultimately McLaren has dropped the ball yet again, which is super unfortunate because I think Lando has a ton of potential. But I'm also a fanboy of him, so I'm going to stop, praising him too much. But we've seen people drive the absolute piss out of a car that sucked complete garbage and produce results. And that person,
Alonso.
That person is Alonso, or that person could be George in some seasons. But
it's true.
Yeah, it's just I'm not sure how they keep falling so far behind the curve when it comes to performance, because they should at least be as good as Aston Martin, in my opinion.
It's true. I think that maybe and we'll talk about this a little bit more on the Indy side, that their expansion and becoming like a much bigger partner. They took over their partners in IndyCar and they added another car, and they brought over quite a fair bit of like engineers, like almost full time to the Indy side, and then they're also working on a wind test tunnel, and it's not open yet, so like they're kind of behind, but I think they have the ability to build the car back up. But yeah, I completely agree. I put, because I tried to put a driver and a manufacturer for each of these, and I did put Piastri as my disappointment for this year. He just gonna be compared to Lando Norris, who, as we both know, can drive the bejesus out of a car. And he doesn't make too many mistakes unless it involves when he should switch from
When it's
from
fit
slicks
strategy.
to inters or wets.
Oh, jeez.
But for the team, I picked Haas. I honestly don't think Haas is very good at developing a car over a season. They're very good at coming out the gate from winter testing quite well, but if they don't get their points within 3 or 4 races, I mean, they fall off the face of the earth. And I expect that to be very much the same moving forward. I just don't think that they're capable of racing a full season, basically. So, with disappointments out of the way, let's go over our Rookie of the Year takes. And I think we've kind of already said who we think ours are, guessing from better than expected and disappointment takes. But Brandon, go ahead.
Yeah, so I did pick Logan Sargent as the Rookie of the Year, primarily because I feel like people aren't going to see Nick DeVries as a rookie because he's been involved with F1 for at least 2 years now in some capacity, whereas Logan Sargent is just now arriving on the scene, and he went straight to the driver's seat. And if you look at the results between the two drivers and all their previous histories, their karting histories, other disciplines, Logan Sargent has a more consistent finishing order than Nick DeVries, who is kind of all over the place. I mean, he still has really good results in those disciplines, but it's not as consistent in the manner of how he achieves it.
And I picked Nick DeVries because I think he's a bit more mature. I think he's, oh God, how old is he? Like 26?
He's 27.
Yeah, he's like 27, so he's a 27-year-old rookie, which is funny because there's like a 36-year-old rookie in IndyCar this year. But yeah, I mean, he's learned. I mean, he won F2 like what 2-3 years ago. DeVries did. He's my pick if you couldn't guess already.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I think he's learned from the boomer bust, which is kind of what he did in Formula 2 and Formula 3, and I'm hoping he's a bit more consistent, and that's kind of my take on that, to kind of see where he's going to be. So rookie takes. How about bold takes? I want to hear your hottest take that you have.
All right. Hot gosh, you heard it from me first. Hulkenberg outperforms Magnussen.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
But that's me. I'm literally breaking a curse here by saying this.
Really?
That means Hulkenberg has to get a podium because we know K-Mag is capable of getting podiums, even in the crappiest of Haas.
That is true. But if he's going to do it, he's going to have to do it in the first 5 races.
Yeah, before they fall back on the development trend.
My bold take is that Mercedes finishes lower than P3 in the constructors, and because of that, Lewis Hamilton retires.
Oh,
He no longer sees a benefit to racing anymore, and he walks away from the sport. So I think that's a pretty hot take, but I can see that happening.
can I make a counterpoint to that?
Go ahead.
I'm confident that Hamilton will not retire until at least 2026 because he has the best chance of winning an eighth title while these development restrictions and the regulations are fixed. And that's what they'll be for the next 3 years. There won't be a big engine development. There won't be a massive aero overhaul. This is it. This is what we're going to have for him to get his eighth title.
It's to me, it's going to depend on how dominant the season is. If it's a dogfight between Aston Martin and Red Bull, I can see that. But if Red Bull runs away with this, like a lot of people kind of expect them to, and if Mercedes starts trailing further and further behind, I can see him walking away. It's going to depend on how the season plays out, though, in my opinion. So pretty good takes there. I hadn't really thought much about the Hulkenberg K-Mag battle quite yet. Have you watched Drive to Survive yet?
I just watched the first episode about 45 minutes ago.
Okay, the last episode, it has it's like the very end of the season, and Hulkenberg comes on, and there's a couple jokes that are thrown around. But yeah, that is something that I'm going to be watching out for now, for sure. With those hot takes, who do you think is going to be the constructor that wins the title this year in Formula One?
I want Ferrari to win.
You want Ferrari to win?
I don't. I don't
do
care.
You know if they're going to win?
I want them to win. I don't think they're capable of it currently with what we've seen, because let's just face it, Leclerc is just like Nick DeVries as far as his consistency. He doesn't produce consistent results. He produces either amazing results or subpar results. And then Carlos just always has a hard time getting his head wrapped around a new car. So, I mean, he got outperformed by Lando in the McLaren. I think he was pretty subpar when he was
one of those years. He finished fifth in the driver's standings. In that McLaren, and Lando struggled. That was the year before he switched over to Ferrari.
Right. So it took him the second year in the McLaren to really understand it, is what I'm saying. So this is his second year in Ferrari, but I feel like because of the new aero, again, he's going to have a hard time getting around that. But because they're largely changing their design to match what Red Bull is.
Yeah, and he does struggle with twitchy cars, as we can all attest to seeing how many spins he's done over the past year. And the Red Bull is quite twitchy. Speaking of which, I have Red Bull walking away at the constructors this year. That may change depending on how qualifying goes. And from what we saw in free practice too, I mean, Aston looks like they're on the ball. Like they might have leaped over Ferrari and Mercedes from what people were saying from testing. They were saying that they were clearly the fourth best car from most of the outlets that I've seen. But I still think Red Bull, if it comes down to a dogfight, I think the backing in Red Bull, since they've gone through this before, and they have a history of these title battles and getting away with it, that kind of thing, I think they pull out.
I will say, as long as they can keep Max and Perez from killing each other, they've got a great chance. True. Because after the ending part of the last season, there's no reason why Perez should play the good teammate anymore.
That's true.
He wants to be front runner. He wants to win races, and he thinks that Max has easily had his time in the spotlight. And Perez has the capability. It's just whether they'll develop the car around him or if they'll favor Max's driving style.
There's no way that they develop it around Perez.
It's not a fast driving style. Perez is very calculated. Perez is very much focused on strategy, not just all-out pace.
Yeah, he's much more of an Alain Prost instead of an Ayrton Senna type. But do keep in mind, Red Bull does have Danny Ricciardo ready to go whenever if they don't decide. I mean, if They got options. They got DeVries as well. If DeVries ends up looking how I think he's going to look. So moving from
it's not against Red Bull to just switch drivers in the middle of the season.
no, they've done it. And they'll do it again. By God. And then so that's our picks for constructors. And who do you have winning the drivers?
I think Max will win the Drivers' World Championship, even if Red Bull fails to win constructors.
Yeah.
He is just such a formidable opponent in any car you put him in.
Yeah, I would love to see Fernando Alonso win another title at the ripe old age of 80 something, whatever he is now, and that would be fantastic. I would lose it, and I'm a total Max fanboy. I'm looking at his 2019 Austria car on my desk right now, but that would be amazing. I don't want him to just walk away with it, but he is also my pick.
Fair enough
for drivers. So switching now from Formula One to IndyCar, do you feel comfortable giving me your suggestions for who's going to do better and all that?
Yes, but I will say I'm highly biased towards the McLaren drivers.
Yes, so am I, and I'm a big IndyCar guy, but I've got a Pato Award bumper sticker, so
like on your car?
Yes, on my car.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So better than expected. Who do you think's gonna shine this year?
I said, I don't know what the number one question was, but I said Pato Award will be the IndyCar champion.
Okay.
And based off of just the performance, I saw him last in the Indy 500 and some of the Indy course races that I watched last year. Again, it's about consistency. He's consistently good at driving the car. You hardly ever hear him on the radio having problems with the car. He's constantly finding solutions to whatever pace he might not have. He finds it in other places on the track. So he's just really resourceful.
Yeah, the big issue has been that McLaren is good at finding a setup that works over one lap, but it hasn't been consistently. It's not something that's consistently good. Either it's way too twitchy, and luckily Pato can get through it because he's got the fastest hands. But yeah, for sure, he is definitely a title contender this year. I picked Newgarden for title contender. I just think God, he won 5 races last year, and Will Power, the eventual title winner, only won 1. But Will was so much more consistent last year. His average placing for a race was 5th, and he only won one race. So he had, I believe, like 13 top 5s or 12 top 5s, 13 top 10s out of like 15 races. So the consistency was insane. And I think Newgarden's going to start picking up on that. He occasionally has bad luck. Honestly, he should have won both of those races last year in Iowa if there wasn't a freak act of God that took him out of that race, or just a random suspension part failed and he flew into the wall.
Jeez.
So I think Newgarden definitely has it in him. As far as people performing better than expected, I think Marcus Armstrong in a Chip Ganassi car is going to be a force to be reckoned with. I think he probably wins at least one race this year, and I think McLaren's going to be on the up and up. They, like I said earlier, they're dumping a lot of resources into the Indy side right now. I think the cost cap in Formula One, Zach Brown has seen other racing series around the world and said, I'll have a piece of that, please. And so he's signing big names. He tried to get Alex Palou last year. I don't know if you remember that situation.
There's like 8 people who were supposed to drive for McLaren this year. What happened?
Well, Palou, who won the 2021 IndyCar championship, and then proceeded to complain that he wasn't getting paid like the other championship winner on the team, Scott Dixon, who was a 7-time, series champion. He tried to get out of his contract at Chip Ganassi. This is his contract year, and he was unable to get out of it. And once Zach Brown figured that out, it he kind of stopped signing people after that. So it's highly likely that after this year he'll move over to McLaren unless Felix Rosenqvist really just kind of lights it up. But yeah, I think McLaren and outside of that, Marcus Armstrong's going to be really strong this year. Who do you think's going to have a bad year this year?
I think Pagano will retire.
You think Simon Pagano will retire?
I think it's going to be his last season.
Okay. I think that Rinus VeeKay with Ed Carpenter Racing. I don't think the Ed Carpenter team is going to be able to give him a car where he can consistently be put in like top fives or anything like that. He's not going to move forward, I don't think, this year until he gets into probably whether if it's a McLaren or a Penske ride, if Will Power decides to quit, which I don't think he will. I also think that the Rahal Letterman Lanigan team won't do that well. And a lot of people might be shocked by that because I don't know if you know this, they broke and they constructed a huge new, like almost F1 quality facility where they're responsible for the BMW GTP project. They're the team behind that, as well as these Indy cars, and they actually got a couple of Formula One engineers to come in and work on dampeners and all that kind of stuff. They have like specific like technical observers, and no one else at IndyCar has this. And I just don't think they have the organization to make that work. I think they're just kind of throwing money at things and hoping that it'll work at this point. Because I haven't seen it on track. Their best driver over the past 5 years was Takuma Sato, and he's gone. And he's in his 40s. He's on the later stages of that. He's probably going to retire quite soon. I just don't think that as an organization they're going to move forward, even though they are trying their damnedest to do so. What do you know about IndyCar rookies?
I don't know much, but I do know that the coolest rookie this year is going to be Stingray Robb.
Yes.
Just because of the name and just because the ability to, make publicity stunts with him. And I feel like he's just going to be the center of the media because they want him to be.
Yeah. Okay, so I actually watched a couple of Indy NXT races, or Indy Lights races last year, specifically because there was a dude named Stingray Robb.
Yes. Oh man.
And he was pretty good. He definitely was not the best. He was not the best, and I think the best in this class this year is going to be Marcus Armstrong. But a dark horse to look out for is going to be the rookie over at AJ Foyt. Is it Foyt? Who is he's a GT racer from South America. Augustine Canapino. He's with Juncos Hollinger Racing with Callum Ilott, who is a F2 ace. He was a Ferrari candidate a couple years back.
Okay.
This Augustine Canapino dude was incredibly fast today in practice. So I still think that Marcus Armstrong is going to be the rookie of the year, especially in a Chip Ganassi car. But I'm watching this Canapino guy as well. Do you have any takes as far as who will win the Indy 500?
Indy 500. Let's see. I think I also have Paddle Award for that as well.
Pato, yeah, he's been close the past couple years.
I feel like at one point last year he was running in first for like 10 laps or
He did
something.
finish second,
Okay, yeah.
right behind Ericsson. Ericsson was blocking pretty hard. I don't. He was weaving really hard last year to the point that
Would you say it was still within the rules as far as
it was on the edge. I
okay.
know a lot of drivers have said that because he wasn't penalized, that if they're in that same position, they're going to do. I mean, they were weaving. He was weaving from like the pit lane entrance all the way to the other wall.
Right.
Like, yeah, it was a lot. I'm not butthurt or anything about it. I think Ericsson definitely deserved it. He's a great guy. I'm super happy for that win. I am picking Scott Dixon this year. I think he's finally going to get the monkey off of his back. The past 2 or 3 years, he's been in contention for over half the race, and then just something weird happens, and it takes Scott out of the race, and he's still somehow able to get into the top 10, even if he's like down a lap or something crazy like that. Scott Dixon just finds a way. He is. We were kind of talking about it before. He is a total Alain Prost kind of person, where he finds a way to get as many points as he possibly can. But I think this year he's going to be able to get that 500 win, and if not him, Joseph Newgarden. Do you have any bold takes this year, as far as IndyCar is concerned?
So it's in my opinion that Rossi will be a better teammate to Pato than Pato will be to Rossi.
Well,
I don't
I
know
don't
if
know.
it's just a thing of age or because he just seems like a more mature driver that he wouldn't want to play those, teammate games and block his teammate and mess up people's strategy for the better of him over his teammate. He's more focused on winning the thing overall.
Question:
Yes.
Did you watch the Mid Ohio race last year?
I have not seen that or the highlights.
Okay, Rossi and Grosjean got into it, like
Okay.
on track
And they're teammates.
3 times.
At this point, they're teammates, yes?
Yes.
Now, you got to remember, Roman Grosjean's a whole other beast.
Yeah.
Like, he sees racing like the way they see it in F1. Unless someone deliberately tells him to stop doing something, he's not going to stop doing it. I mean, how many times did he take out Magnussen by accident?
It's
And he
true.
blamed it on Magnussen.
It's true.
I think it happened 3 times in one race weekend.
That's interesting. I don't think that they'll be close enough. I think Pato will probably be ahead of Rossi. Rossi's got a new race engineer this year. I'm hopeful that he does well. He's with a completely new engine manufacturer this year, and he's still come to grips with the different properties of that compared to the Honda power plant. He's my favorite IndyCar driver. I have socks with him on it.
Nice.
And I have both a hat and a shirt with his name on it. But I think this is a year for him to learn. I don't think there's a lot of huge expectations for him. I think he is expected to do well. Last year he placed P9 in the standing. He was the top Andretti driver. Somehow he had terrible luck, but he still got P9 because he was a bit more consistent than Colton Herta was. And I think P9 is kind of the target for him, if not maybe a little better, which I think is doable for him. But as far as my bold takes, I think Rossi will outperform Grosjean, and I think Grosjean falls off a cliff this year.
Jeez.
And I like Roman, but last year was not good, and we kind of saw similar things in Formula One. God's honest truth that he started with Lotus / Renault and was quite good for the first 2 to 3 years. He was probably a little too ambitious with overtaking opportunities again, but he was a quick driver. but the consistency just is not there, and consistency is probably more important in IndyCar due to the way points are handed out than it is in Formula One. And I don't think that, I mean, he might get a podium this year, but I don't see him winning a race. I honestly don't. Not with the amount of talent and the different strategies that can happen in IndyCar, and anyone can win a race, as we saw last year. I just don't think. Even with that, I just don't think Roman has it in him. It's too competitive here.
Now, I will say something that supports your point. Roman Grosjean has its own like e-racing team, esports, and when he is actually streaming, he gets very complacent behind the wheel because he's an F1 driver in real life. So he feels like these sim racers who have shown the whole world that they're just as good as him. He doesn't feel like they have the same talent as him, and he pushes the limits past the point, and he usually pays for it. So it wouldn't surprise me if he became complacent in IndyCar as well because he has that Formula One background.
Yeah, he doesn't have any Jimmy Johnsons really to bowl over. Like he really was able to for the past 2 years. I think the strength of the field is probably the best it's been in 5 years. We've got a couple paid drivers. I think like Devlin DeFrancesco, and to a lesser extent Benjamin Peterson and Stingray Robb. But even we've got Renus VK, Connor Daly, Colton Herta, David Malukas was fantastic last year. Santino Ferrucci, I hate him, but he can drive a car, and he's very good on ovals. He is so good on ovals. It's just, and that's not even including Marcus Armstrong, Alex Palou, Scott Dixon, Rossi, Rosenquist, Elio Castroneves, Pato O'Ward, Scott McLaughlin, Newgarden, Will Power, there's 20 names there that could win a race any Sunday. It's nuts.
You know, the funny thing, I haven't seen a ton of IndyCar. Like, I've seen it here and there throughout the years, but now, this is the first year I'm really getting involved with it. Despite the lack of viewing that I've seen, I've heard every single name on the list you just said.
Exactly.
So at some point, they were leading a race, or they were fighting for position where the commentators were focused on them.
There is such a breadth of talent in this series, and it's refreshing because they all basically have the same equipment. Now, they don't all have the same race engineers and that kind of thing. And that's kind of the difference between the teams and constructors. And there is minor differences between the Honda and Chevy power plants, but it really showcases the strengths of the driver and the race engineer in this series. And it really is just, how well are you at racing and not so much developing a car? And that's, to an extent, why I don't think Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan will succeed as much as they're wanting to. Speaking of them, did you have a take for constructor to take it this year?
Oh, McLaren Aero.
McLaren, okay.
Yeah.
I'm picking Chip Ganassi. I don't know if you know this, but the past 10 years, there have been only 2 teams that have won the constructor, and that is Penske and Chip Ganassi. So there's a breadth of driver talent that can win any race, but as far as teams and constructors, and part of this is due to the fact that you can run more than 2 cars. And last year, Juncos only ran 1 car. But Andretti runs 4 cars, and they have not won a constructor championship since 2012. And it's incredibly hard to do so with how consistently good the Penske and Chip Ganassi cars are. And for that reason, I've got Ganassi winning the constructors, and then to pull it back, I had Newgarden winning the drivers, it was very close last year, and you had Pato, correct?
Yes.
All right. Well, those were our takes. Brandon, thank you for taking some time out of your Friday night to discuss some series that you know a lot about and some you're wanting to know more about. So I hope you guys enjoyed this session. We might do more content like this in the future. Don't forget to let me know in the comments if you liked it. Thanks.
Running to the complete